Hey guys, go. In this video, we're going to talk about in this video. What we are going to talk about? We are going to talk about the in-depthness. What does it mean? What did Dalio, what did Dalio want to say about this? At the risk of repeating myself too many times, I will review the bill I at the depth cycle because I carry that perspective into my calculation in the explaining 10-year growth rate. As explained, short-term volatility is more due to debt crisis than productivity, but it's volatility, uh, 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 volatility cancel out over time because credit allow people to consume more than they produce. When they acquire it, it forces people to consume less than they produce when they pay it out. Undulation around long-term productivity are driven by debt cycle. Remember, in the economy, without credit, the only way to increase your spending is to produce more. But in the economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. That creates cycle. When debt level are low relative to income level are rising, the upward cycle is self reinforcing on the upside because rising spending generate rising income and rising which raise borrowers capacity to borrow, which allow more buying and spending etc. However, since debt can't rise fast together then and income forever, there are limits to debt growth. Okay. Thing to debt growth, this is faster than income growth. As being like air in a scuba bottle, there is limited amount of it that can be used to get extra boost, but it can't live on it forever. In case of debt, you can take it out before you put it in. If you don't have any debt, you can take it out, but you can expect it to return what you took out. When you're taking it out, you can spend more than sustainable. Give you an appreciation of being prosperous. At such time, you should all yeah, you and those who are to it which mistake might mistake you as the being creditworthy and not pay enough attention to what being acted like. When debt can go no longer be raised relative to income and the time of paying back come, the process work in the reverse. You can get a picture of which country stand in the long-term debt cycle and likelihood of debt being supported by determinant to future growth of assetting. The part relies on debt to support income and the attractiveness of taking new debt. For these reasons, I expect countries that have a low amount of debt relative to income, debt growth rate that are low in relation to income growth rate, easier monetary policy to grow faster over 10 years than countries high amount of debt relative to income, debt growth rate that are high in relation to income to growth rate. Tighter monetary policy, that is true, that one exception, which is when adequate financial intermediaries don't exist. Institution can and capital market that facilitate these transactions have to be in place in system to work. For that reason, for when forecasting long-term future growth rate, we have taken into consideration the level of the development of countries' financial intermediaries, luck and wars. As mentioned, they can play a role. For example, the US shale gas was lucky. Potential conflicts should have always been watched. While to some extent these are anticipated, they are not part of the formula that and don't typically matters much. They are exceptional. The interaction of these forces is driven by human nature. While productivities in-depthness can be taught as a separate concept, they are ultimately a function of choices people make. Psychology. I briefly touch on culture as an influence on these choices and their outcome. Also, I observe important shift in the attitude from one generation to the next, which are due to their different experience. In poetry, the rises of decline of economics over last 500 years, I show how psychology tend to shift and country move through their economic lives. However, it is worth touching on the influence here before I delve into examination of what all economic health indicators are pointing for it for 20 major economics. In addition to productivity and the debt cycle I spoke about, these tend to be psychologically motivated cycle that occur as a function of one prosperity and whether one experience in borrowing and worsening. When a country is poor and focused on survival, its people who have subsistence lifestyle don't waste money because they value it a lot. They don't have any debt or to speak of because saving are short. Nobody want to lend to them. Even though a country labor is low cost, it's it is not competitive and lack of look. What does lack of investment systemizes future productivity gains. Some energy emerge from the stage and other don't. With culture and location being are the two most biggest determinant. For those they do either because their country move a big big barrier like being close to world as China did 1980 or simply because more gradual evolution make their labor attractive. Virtue cycle can kick in. At this stage the investment are not just inexpensive. The stock of the infrastructure and other physical capital is also typical low, and there is lots of room to adapt existing technologies that can be radically improve the country's potential. Leveraging up increasing one in-depthness can feed back into higher productivity and competitive gains, which produce higher return that attract more investment at the time when the capacities and leverage is high. The key is that this money is created must be used to produce investment that yield enough return to pay for debt service and finance further growth, so that income rise as fast as faster there. Yet to countries grow wealthier, more and more the credit tend to be fuel consumption rather than investment. A process that has a was once virtuous can become self-destructive. The decreased investment in quality project means productivity growth slow. Even as the borrowing, the spending making incomes makes income grow and labor more expensive. People feel rich and begin taking more leisure. After all, asset prices are high, even though their balance sheet are starting and deteriorate. At this point, debt burden start compound income grow faster than productivity growth. In other words, the country tend to become over indebted and uncompetitive. The country is becoming poor even though it's still behaving as though it is rich. Eventually, the excess tend to lead to bubbles bursting, a period of slow decline and deleveraging. So this is to say that when looking at a country potential to grow, it is critical to look at the country productivity and in-depthness holistically as part of the stage of development. Okay, a formula of future growth. As explained by research team, and I built a formula of future growth. Future growth from the top down. We started with my own concept on productivity and in-depthness affect growth that flash their forces out and specific indicator, and they show how formula created the way work out. I followed this approach because I believe that one should able to describe the cause effect relationship and logic behind what without looking at the data, and that only after doing that should one look at the data to see how well description is square with what happened, because otherwise one should be inclined to be blinded by data and not force oneself objectively one understanding cause effect relationship. As mentioned, from what I can tell, about two-thirds of the country 10-year growth rate will be due to productivity and about one-third will be due to the indebtedness. The visual below conveys that two forces. Our productivity indicator aim to measure how steep the productivity growth line over the time, and our indebtedness measure aim to measure how debt cycle will influence growth over the medium term. Over the medium term. Below the list of the what I have come to learn about these things that along with the name of intentions my research team and I created reflect them. Based on the reason outlined here, we created a simple logic weight index and productivity of simple logic weight index of indebtedness. We used to same set of factor weight the same way of each gauge across all the country and across the time frame. That way there was no fitting the data or measure of productivity and happiness are timeless and universal. We put two-thirds of the weight to and third on the indebtedness. After creating these indices, we observe how each predictive the subsequent 10-year growth rate of each country, which we measure every year, every 5 years in other world. We observe rather than fit the data. The data below show the concept of weight and their correlation with the next 10 year per capita growth rate for the universal 20 years. Together, these indicators were 86 correlated with countries' subsequent growth rate. So we will show how will these measure related to the future growth of across country and time. Okay, we have read more about it. Let's continue with the process. Future growth estimate, a summary of our region. Let's read about it. Productivity, producing more by working harder or smart. Value, what you pay or what you get. Countries that offer the most value of the, that don't. The most important attribute or whether their people are working hard, investment or educated and protecting their job. Education, a better educated worker will likely to more effective today and offer more promise tomorrow than this or her peer. Labor productivity, a work of similar education who produces more in the same amount of time is more attractive than the who producing less. Working hard workers will generally produce more and find ways to improve faster than those who have opted more leisure. Countries that save an investment in productive capital and infrastructure will improve their potential more than those don't. Cost of quality adjusted educated worker. Wait, correlation. Culture influence the choice people make and effectiveness of economic system. Self-sufficiency, the need and the ability to independently support oneself is healthy and important to being a successful. Showering life and achieving. Those who have valued achievement over showering the fruits of life will be more successful in finding ways to work harder and smarter. Innovation and commercialism. Commercialism. Countries that value new ideas and invest in them will be find new better way to produce faster. Bureaucracy, lots of red tape and regulation. Systemizes versionist activity. Corruption, data investment and distorts market initiatives. Rule of law, investor and business people need to feel secure their agreement and property will be protected. Okay, that's our now debt and service level. Countries with high debt burden has less room to leverage and take on new debt. Debt flow, a country can rely on a credit growth to boost spending without income, but only so long. When the rate of a credit cannot be sustained, spending must slow. Monetary policy can make new borrowing more or less attractive. Oh, we are here. We read about the different things in order to take a future growth of a country. First, we have to talk about the value. What you have to pay, what you get. Value in terms of the education, labor, productivity, working hard, investing. Second one is culture. How culture should be. Culture can be divided into different parts. Self-sufficiency culture, sharing life or versus achieving innovation and commercialism, bureaucracy, corruption, rule of law. How a culture should be in order to growth of a country. Self-sufficiency, the need and ability to independent support oneself is healthy and important to being a successful. There are many different aspects of a culture. Why we are using aspect all the time in order to divide, in order to demonstrate anything. Third one is indebtedness, showing an credit driving swings and spending and economic growth. Debt flow, depth and depth service levels, monetary policy. All these we have read. The measure of productivity and indebtedness can be used to predict each country absolute and relative growth rate over the next 10 years or longer period. This is also used to policymaker to indicate what levers that can be moved to influence future growth. To reiterate, my goal is to get the big picture right, to reliable expo approximately right by focusing the most important driver rather than try to be precise by focusing on the detail. Before looking at the picture, we will show how will aggregate indicator would have productive future feature. As this aggregate feature has been shown. Productive estimated future growth against subsequent 10-year growth. Correlation. Okay. What do we say? Projection. We will read about the projection in next video. Till then, bye. See you again.